Intelligence System Analytic Computer is activated. All ISAC systems are confirmed online. Data scanned. Downloading files.
Hey guys, this is Mike from SITREP Radio, a podcast that is focused around the Division, and I'm here to welcome you to this tactical looter shooter set in the Tom Clancy world. Whether you are completely new to the game or are coming back from a long break, over the course of this video series I'm hoping to guide you through the ins and outs of the Division, with the overall aim being to help you get your character to level 30, provide advice for the endgame content that lies beyond this, and sharing some tips, tricks and hints that we at SITREP Radio have learned along the way. So you've got to level 30, completed the campaign, the grind's over, and now you can take on the best of what the game has to offer, right? Unfortunately not. Once you hit level 30, you will no longer be tied to a level, but instead, your agent is now tied to a gear score. Your overall gear score is calculated based on the average gear score of all the items of gear and weapons you currently have equipped on your character's current build or loadout. As a fresh agent post level 30, you will currently be at a low gear score. Increasing this gear score not only makes you more powerful, but also requires you to progress through the world tier brackets that are now available to you. There are 5 world tier brackets available in total, each with increasing difficulty and have progressive gear score entry requirements from one tier to the next. For example, tier 1 will reward the player with loot drops in the range of 0 to 181 gear score. However, only when you have equipped the maximum gear score of that world tier will the next tier unlock. Therefore, all weapons and gear must be at 181 before you can progress to the second world tier. This process is repeated from tiers 1 to 4, with tier 5's ultimate goal being to reach the maximum gear score in that bracket depending on what gear you now have equipped. The difficulty of activities and all NPCs now scale according to the world tier bracket you are in, meaning that the progression between the world tiers can be a little tough at the lower end of each tier, but will eventually get easier and easier as your gear score creeps towards that of the next world tier bracket. The same goes for reward gains, as you will receive more loot and resources depending on both difficulty and the current world tier you are in. Now at this point in the game, there are 3 main methods to progress through the world tiers, mainly by collecting loot. First off, playing the game at your own pace through any of the available content that is now unlocked for you as a level 30 plus player. Here are some of the options available to you. Completing any remaining missions you haven't checked off yet is a good start. This also includes side missions and encounters, as these will reward you with loot drops along the way. Also, making sure the base of operations is fully restored to 100% at each of the med, tech and security wings is a must. This is a priority if you haven't already completed this, as you may be missing vital skills and upgrades that could make all the difference at this point in either PvP or PvE activities. Next up is HVTs and search and destroy missions. High value targets or HVTs are additional side missions or contracts you can undertake now you've hit level 30. However, these require target intel in order to purchase them. The fastest way to obtain target intel is through search and destroy missions. Heading to any of the safe houses throughout Manhattan and interacting with the situation board will start these. You will then be sent to take down NPCs from various locations nearby. Once complete, head back to the same safe house these were handed out and you will be rewarded with some loot and target intel. Completing the critical search and destroy missions that are highlighted on the map will also reward you with more intel on completion, so we would suggest to do these as a priority over the others. Side note, search and destroy missions will only be available in a district once all missions and side missions and encounters have been completed. Once you have found enough target intel, head to the terminal connected to the base of operations, and from here you will find 2 NPCs you can now purchase HVTs or contracts using the intel you have just farmed. These will send you to various areas of the open world map on execution missions to kill named bosses, as well as a supporting cast of NPCs from each of the factions of the Division. These are a great source for funds and decent loot drops, especially with the higher difficulty contracts. However, a team of 4 may be required to complete these, so consider squadding up for some help before purchasing the more difficult, more expensive contracts. Failure to complete a contract will cause the HVT mission to restart, and in order to start again, you will have to pay with yet more target intel. There are also daily and weekly versions of the contracts available for purchase, and these do reset, so make sure to drop by and see what's on offer regularly. Field proficiency caches are another good source of loot. These also have a chance of obtaining various sought after gear, such as classified and exotic items that you will definitely require during the endgame content. completing missions, killing NPCs, all add to this new field proficiency level in place of the old 1 to 30 level. Quick tip, collecting intel in the open world will also reward you a large amount of XP that will add to the field proficiency cache level, so check your map and see what you have left to collect. The open world of The Division is home to some of the most notorious named bosses in the game. These elites are available to find in the open world map and can be farmed for loot as they reset every 4 hours. The locations aren't shown on the map, however, there are various resources available to point you in the right direction if you don't want to find these on your own. As a level 30 player, you also find that incursions are now available to you on the open world map, as well as the underground, resistance, last stand or skirmish modes, which are now unlocked for you to play, located either at the base of operations or Camp Clinton. Many of these scale with the world tier difficulty and are definitely worth checking out. Loot rewards from these modes, including survival, will reward you with caches of loot for playing. Hoarding these caches is a good idea as the loot they contain isn't determined when you receive them and can be opened later on to receive higher gear scored loot. We will cover all this content in more detail in a separate episode. Next up is the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone is one of the best areas to farm for loot in the game. Here, killing roaming NPCs, clearing boss guarded landmarks, clearing contaminated events, or taking on Dark Zone supply drops will reward you with a ton of loot. As mentioned before, all of these will drop at the loot level according to your world tier bracket, so sometimes you'll find yourself sifting through your backpack and stash in order to equip the highest piece of gear you can so you can progress to the next world tier. However, be warned, the Dark Zone is a PvP and PvE area of the game, so you will almost certainly encounter other players whilst you are roaming around the streets of the Dark Zone. Rogue agents will want to steal your loot, so expect to fight to keep hold of your rewards from time to time. It is also worth noting that a lot of the loot from the Dark Zone will need to be extracted via a helicopter pickup in order to be available for you to use. We haven't even scratched the surface of what the Dark Zone is or what it presents to you as a player of The Division, so look out for our dedicated video on this coming soon. The third and final method of progressing through the world tier brackets is not one that we would recommend, but it is the fastest. Progressing through the endgame for us, much like the campaign, is some of the best content that this game has to offer, and the grind can be really immersive, so enjoy it while you can, is our official advice. However, if you are looking to get looted up and progress to the highest world tier bracket as fast as you possibly can, you are going to require the aid of someone that is already in the highest world tier. By joining up with them, you're allowed access to the highest world tier bracket, World Tier 5, meaning all loot drops for you will scale accordingly. However, as we mentioned earlier, the difficulty of the NPCs and activities will scale to this higher level too. The player or players you squad up with will need to do most, if not all, of the work while you're going through your activities, as you will find yourself quite undergeared and underpowered. However, any rewards your squad mates receive can be dropped and shared with you, meaning the progression is possibly 2, 3, or even 4 times as fast if you're lucky enough to be grouped with a competent and generous squad. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like. Thanks agents, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
You're listening to a Mash Those Buttons podcast. Visit mashthosebuttons.com for a full podcast schedule.
Cargo secure.